I'm Emma Collins, and I'm 25 years old. I recently received my fine arts degree from the University of California. There are difficulties in life as a recent graduate, but my narrative is about more than just adjusting to adulthood. It's about a family legacy, treachery, and persevering through hardship. My mother, Olivia Collins, was the center of my world as a child. She was a brilliant chef and businesswoman who was also a careful planner in addition to being an amazing cook. Even before her cancer diagnosis, she had a purpose in life and made sure I always had a safety net. She had guaranteed both her and my future. She poured her heart and soul into building the family bakery from the ground up, making it one of her most treasured belongings. She left the company to me when she died 4 years ago so that I would have something to cling to, a piece of her that would never die. When she said, "Emma, this bakery is more than just a business. We call it home. Our origins. You will always have a home of your own." She fought cancer, but she never wavered in her commitment to getting me ready for life without her. She ensured that I comprehended every aspect of the company, from handling suppliers to managing employees. Her love was demonstrated by her foresight, and I remember that every day. But life wasn't always easy. Before it all broke apart, my parents' marriage lasted 10 years. My father, Jack Collins, left us for someone else when I was a young child. There were only silent farewells, no theatrical altercations or courtroom skirmishes. He soon moved on, marrying Madison, a younger lady who seemed to naturally assume the roles of mother and wife. Soon after, their daughter Abigail was born, and even though I periodically went to see them, I never felt like I fit in with their new family. Madison was always polite but distant, the kind of stepmother who made you feel like a guest rather than part of the household. "Emma, would you like to stay for dinner?" she'd ask, her tone suggesting she hoped I'd say no. Meanwhile, Dad worked long hours, claiming he needed to provide for his family, a category that seemed to exclude me more often than not. Abigail, my half-sister, was 10 years younger and the apple of their eye. I'd see Madison fuss over her, braiding her hair or applauding her every little accomplishment. It was hard not to feel like an outsider. Despite all this, my relationship with my father remained cordial, though distant. He paid for my college education in a lump sum, perhaps out of guilt or obligation. It was his way of staying involved without actually being present. I accepted it without question because, at the time, I thought it was the best I could hope for. Little did I know that my mother's thoughtful plans and my father's hidden motives would set the stage for a storm I never saw coming. Losing my mother was the hardest thing I've ever faced. Olivia Collins wasn't just my mom. She was my anchor, my cheerleader, and the person who made me feel like I could take on the world. When she passed away from cancer 4 years ago, just weeks before I was supposed to leave for college, my world crumbled. The grief was overwhelming. It felt like a piece of me was missing, and for a long time, I struggled to even get out of bed. During those first few weeks, I was numb, barely able to process the fact that she was gone. That's when my father, Jack Collins, stepped in, offering help in a way I hadn't expected. He, along with Madison and Abigail, temporarily moved into the house to support me. At the time, I was too overwhelmed by my loss to question it. I was just grateful for the presence of people, even if our relationship had always been strained. "We're here for you," Emma, my dad said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Madison nodded in agreement, her face carefully arranged to look sympathetic. Even Abigail, my half-sister, seemed to go out of her way to be kind, though her curious eyes wandered through the house, taking in every corner like it was a museum. At first, their presence brought some relief. Madison took charge of organizing meals and keeping the house running, while Dad helped with the overwhelming paperwork that comes with losing a loved one. Abigail would sit with me, chatting about school and her friends, offering small distractions from the crushing weight of my grief. It felt strange, but in those moments, almost comforting. As summer drew to a close and my college start date approached, I faced a difficult decision: what to do with the house. Selling it was unthinkable. It was my mother's legacy, the place she'd worked so hard to secure for us. But leaving it empty for 4 years didn't seem like a smart option either. That's when Dad came to me with a proposal. "Emma," he said one morning over coffee, "why don't we stay here while you're at school? We'll cover all the bills, maintain the place, and you won't have to worry about a thing." Madison, flipping pancakes at the stove, chimed in it would be good for everyone. "Abigail loves her school here, and the house will be in great hands." At the time, it seemed like a practical solution. I agreed, grateful for the offer, and left for college with a sense that my mother's house and her memory would be cared for. College was a whirlwind of classes, assignments, and late-night study sessions, but coming home during breaks always felt like stepping into a different world. My visits were a comforting reminder of home, and over time, I started to notice something unexpected. The family dynamic at my mother's house was changing. When I came home for my first break, Madison greeted me with a warm smile and a home-cooked meal. "Welcome back, Emma. I made lasagna, your favorite," she said, setting the table as if she'd always known my preferences. Abigail, my half-sister, couldn't wait to drag me to her room to show off her latest artwork. "Look, Emma, do you think I should add more blue here?" she'd ask, her enthusiasm infectious. For the first time, she treated me like a sister rather than the distant relative who occasionally visited. As the years passed, these visits became more than just a chance to recharge. They started to feel like I was part of something bigger. During Christmas breaks, we decorated the tree together, arguing playfully over ornaments. "Tinsel is so tacky," Madison would declare, while I'd laugh and insist it was classic. Dad would lift Abigail to place the star on top, grinning as if this was the family he'd always envisioned. Those moments felt warm and genuine, almost like we were truly a family. Summer breaks were longer and even more relaxed. Abigail and I would spend lazy afternoons at the community pool or binge-watch movies while eating popcorn. Madison surprised me by inviting me to her book club, where we bonded over dissecting romance novels and laughed at the plot twists. Emma's insights are spot on. Madison told her friends one evening, making me feel included in a way I hadn't expected. Even Dad seemed to take a step back from his usual reserved demeanor. He'd join us for dinners and ask about my classes, genuinely interested in my life. "Your mom would be so proud of you," he said one evening, his voice thick with emotion. It was moments like these that made me feel like I wasn't just a visitor, I was part of the family. Over time, I began to see Madison and Abigail in a different light. Madison, who once seemed cold and distant, became almost maternal, always asking about my life and making sure I felt at home. Abigail's youthful energy and constant chatter filled the house with life, and her habit of seeking my advice made me feel like an older sister for the first time. The house, too, seemed to change with each visit. Small touches of Madison's influence appeared. A new set of curtains, a carefully arranged centerpiece on the dining table. But they were tasteful, blending with the warmth my mom had cultivated. It felt like we were all building something together, something that honored the past while embracing the present. By the time I graduated, I genuinely believed we'd created a strange but functional family dynamic. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. I never imagined how fragile it all was, how quickly the foundation we built could crack under the weight of hidden truths. Graduating from college felt like the start of a new chapter in my life. After 4 years of hard work, late-night study sessions, and dreaming about my future, I finally had my degree in hand. I'd landed a job at a local firm back in my hometown, and the thought of returning to the house I'd grown up in filled me with a sense of comfort and excitement. My mother's house, my house, was waiting for me, a place where I could finally settle down and start building my career. The June afternoon I arrived back home was bright and warm, the kind of day that fills you with optimism. As the taxi pulled up to the driveway, I smiled at the familiar side of the house. The garden looked well maintained, though the roses my mom had planted seemed slightly different from how she tended them. The house felt the same, yet subtly altered by the small changes Madison had made over the years. New curtains, a different paint color on the shutters. It all looked welcoming. I couldn't wait to step inside and claim my room once again. Dragging my suitcases up the front walk, I reached for my keys, eager to walk into the home that had always been a safe haven for me. But when I slid the key into the lock, it wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again, jiggling the key slightly. Still nothing. Confused, I muttered to myself, "What the hell?" and knocked loudly on the door. Surely it was just a mistake, a new lock installed without anyone thinking to send me a spare key. After a moment, the door opened and Madison stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to discomfort in an instant. She was wearing an apron dusted with flour, as if she'd been baking. "Emma," she said, her voice hesitant, "what are you doing here?" I wheeled my suitcase into the entryway, ignoring the awkwardness in her tone. "What do you mean?" "I live here," I replied, scanning the living room, which looked subtly different from how I'd left it. New furniture arrangements, a different rug. Why were the locks changed? Before Madison could answer, Dad appeared from the living room, his face pale and movements stiff. Abigail trailed behind him, looking nervous but staying silent. "Emma," Dad began, rubbing the back of his neck, a telltale sign he was uncomfortable. "Let's talk in the office for a minute." Alarm bells started ringing in my head as I followed him to the small office that used to belong to my mom. The walls were still lined with her books and certificates, but the air felt heavy, as if the room itself knew what was coming. Dad closed the door behind us and turned to face me, his hands shaking slightly. "Emma," he started, his voice low. "There's something I need to tell you." He paused, and I could see the weight of his words pressing down on him. Madison thinks this house belongs to me." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about?" "Mom left this house to me. It's in her will." He nodded, avoiding my eyes. "I know that, but when we moved in, I told Madison it was mine, that I'd given it to your mom out of kindness after the divorce, and that when she passed, it came back to me." The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. "You lied to her for 4 years. You let her believe this was your house, and now you're telling me that she doesn't even know it's mine." Dad's shoulders slumped. "I didn't think it would matter. You were at college, and we needed a place to stay. I thought it would be temporary." Anger and disbelief surged through me. "Temporary? This is my house, Dad, Mom's house. And you're telling me you've been living here, letting Madison act like it's hers while you lied to her and to me." I was going to tell her the truth, he said weakly, but his words rang hollow. "Just give me some time to figure out how to handle this." I shook my head, furious. "You've already had 4 years, Dad." At that moment, Madison knocked on the door. Her voice was sharp. "Is everything okay in there?" The tension was suffocating, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let them continue this charade. The first few days back in the house were awkward, but I tried to convince myself that things would get better after the confrontation with my father. I chose to keep quiet for the time being, hoping he would resolve the situation as promised. But the atmosphere in the house shifted almost immediately, and Madison's behavior quickly took a turn for the worse. It started with small things, comments that sounded polite on the surface, but were laced with subtle jabs. "Emma, I reorganized the pantry for efficiency. You probably didn't notice since you've been so busy with college," she'd say, smiling too sweetly. Then there were the accidents. One morning, I found my favorite blouse in the laundry, ruined with bright pink streaks. "Oh dear," Madison exclaimed when I confronted her, her tone dripping with mock concern. I must have mixed up the laundry baskets. These things happen when a house gets too crowded. Abigail, who had once been eager to spend time with me, now seemed distant and aloof. She rolled her eyes whenever I entered the room and started referring to me as "that girl" during her loud phone conversations with friends. "Mom says it's weird you're still here," I overheard her whispering one evening. The words stung more than I expected. Madison's passive-aggressive jabs soon turned into outright hostility. One evening, as I poured myself a cup of coffee, she cornered me in the kitchen, arms crossed and her expression icy. "Emma, have you thought about getting your own place?" she asked, her tone casual but her words pointed. "You're starting a new job soon. It's time to think about living independently. You're a grown woman, after all." I clenched the mug in my hands, forcing myself to stay calm. "Actually, I've talked to Dad about staying here for a while. He's fine with it." Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. Instead, she turned and left the kitchen without another word. But her actions spoke louder than anything she could have said. The next morning, I woke up to find the living room rearranged, my mother's favorite vase moved to a dusty corner shelf. It didn't match the new aesthetic, Madison said when I confronted her. My frustration grew, but I tried to hold my tongue, knowing any argument would only make things worse. The tension in the house was unbearable. Madison made it clear I wasn't welcome, and Abigail followed her lead, treating me with disdain. Even Dad, who had always been my safety net, seemed distant. He avoided eye contact and often left the house early in the morning, claiming work obligations. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. Family dinners became a battlefield of subtle digs and uncomfortable silences. Madison would cook just enough food for 3 people, then feign surprise when I joined them at the table. "Oh, I didn't think you'd be here for dinner," she'd say, her tone light but her eyes cold. Abigail giggled at her mother's remarks, and Dad would sit quietly, avoiding any confrontation. As the days passed, the isolation began to wear on me. I found myself retreating to my room more often, avoiding the hostility that seemed to follow me around the house. But even there, I couldn't escape the suffocating sense of betrayal. This wasn't just about Madison anymore. It was about my father, the man who had stood by silently as his wife chipped away at my sense of belonging. I tried to focus on my new job and reconnecting with old friends to distract myself, but the weight of the tension at home lingered. Each day, the cracks in our fragile family dynamic grew deeper, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pushed out of my own life. Saturday mornings started unusually quiet. No sounds of Madison's weekend baking in the kitchen, no music blasting from Abigail's room, and no faint murmurs of the TV, where Dad usually watched sports. The silence was eerie, like the house itself was holding its breath. I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs, calling out, "Hello, Madison, Dad?" But there was no response. The kitchen was spotless, not just clean, but unused since the night before. The living room looked untouched, with throw pillows perfectly arranged on the couch. Even the usual clutter by the entryway, Abigail's shoes, Madison's handbag, was gone. A quick glance outside confirmed it. Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. I checked my phone, expecting a note or text explaining their absence, but there was nothing. Confused, I dialed Dad's number. It went straight to voicemail. Frowning, I tried a few more times before reluctantly calling Madison. She picked up on the fourth ring, her voice sharp and impatient. "What do you want, Emma?" she snapped. The sound of waves and tropical music played faintly in the background. "I just wanted to know where everyone is," I said, caught off guard by her tone. I woke up and the house was empty. She laughed, but it wasn't the warm kind of laugh. It was mean, cutting. "Oh, didn't we tell you? We're in the Maldives. First-class flights, luxury resort, the works." Her voice dripped with mockery. "We didn't mention it because, frankly, we didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you." "What?" I stammered, disbelief mixing with anger. "Madison, what are you talking about? You left without saying anything." "Save it," she interrupted coldly. "I'm done with this whole situation. You're nothing but a freeloader, living in our house, mooching off us like you own the place. Your father might tolerate it, but I won't. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a grown woman squatting in her home?" Her words hit like a slap, but she wasn't finished. "When we get back, I want you gone. Pack your things and leave, Emma. And don't think you can guilt your father into letting you stay. He agrees with me. He's just too spineless to tell you himself. We've already blocked your number. Have a nice life." The line went dead before I could respond. For a moment, I just stood there, the phone trembling in my hand. Her venomous words echoed in my mind, and the weight of the betrayal hit me like a tidal wave. But then something inside me shifted. The sadness and disbelief gave way to anger. White-hot, focused anger. This was my house. My mother's house, and I was done playing nice. I spent the rest of the day packing their belongings with a determination I didn't know I had. Madison's expensive clothes, Abigail's school supplies, Dad's golf clubs, all of it went into boxes and suitcases. I stacked them neatly in the garage, making sure not a single trace of them remained in the house. Every move felt cathartic, like I was reclaiming a piece of myself with each item I packed away. By evening, I had called a locksmith. "Can you change the locks immediately?" I asked, my voice firm. He arrived within the hour, replacing every lock in the house while I stood by, clutching the new keys like a lifeline. It cost a small fortune, but I didn't care. As I closed the door behind him, I felt a strange sense of relief. This was my house again, and no one was going to take it from me. Friday evening, I pulled into the driveway after a long day at work and immediately spotted their car. They were back. Madison, Dad, and Abigail stood near the front steps, surrounded by their suitcases and boxes from the garage. Madison's face was flushed with fury, her hands gesturing wildly as she spoke to Dad. Abigail hung back, scowling, while Dad wore his usual look of quiet discomfort. As soon as I stepped out of my car, Madison's voice erupted. "How dare you change the locks?" she shouted, storming toward me. "This is our house. You have no right to lock us out." I ignored her ranting, walking calmly past them toward the front door. Madison followed close behind, her voice rising with every step. "This is breaking and entering. We're calling the police. You think you can just throw us out like we're nothing." I stopped at the door, turned, and faced her. Something inside me felt calm, steady, even as her words spat like venom. "No, Madison," I said firmly. "This isn't your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother left it to me in her will. The only reason you've been living here is because I allowed it. And now I'm done." Her face twisted in disbelief. She turned to Dad, who stood frozen near the car. "Jack, tell her she's lying. Tell her this is our house." she demanded, her voice shrill. Dad looked like he wanted to melt into the pavement. He avoided my gaze as he shuffled uncomfortably, finally mumbling, "She's telling the truth." Madison's fury boiled over. "You lied to me," she shrieked, glaring at him. "You let me think this was your house, that you were doing me a favor by letting her stay. What else haven't you told me?" Her attention snapped back to me, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. "Emma, sweetheart," she began, her tone suddenly soft and saccharine. "We've had so many good times here. Holiday dinners, book club nights. This is a family home. Surely we can work something out." "No," I said, cutting her off. "We can't. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave." Madison's mask cracked, her tone turning venomous again. "You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You throw your own family out on the streets." "You've never treated me like family," I shot back, my voice calm but firm. "And don't pretend this is about loyalty. You tried to steal my house, Madison. My mother's house." Dad finally stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Emma, please. I know I've made mistakes, but we're family. We can figure this out. Just let us stay a little longer." I shook my head, meeting his pleading eyes with steel. "No, Dad. You lied to her, and you lied to me. You let her erase every trace of Mom from this house while you stood by and said nothing. I won't let you keep doing this." Madison tried one last time, her voice rising with desperation. "You can't do this. We'll fight you on this, Emma." I opened the door and stepped inside, turning to face them one last time. "You're welcome to try," I said simply, closing the door firmly behind me. Through the window, I watched them argue as they loaded the last of their belongings into the car. Madison screamed, Abigail cried, and Dad just looked defeated. As the car pulled away, a heavy weight lifted from my chest. The house was mine again, truly mine. In the days following their departure, the house felt eerily quiet, but the silence brought a surprising sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells or bracing for Madison's passive-aggressive remarks. The space was mine again, and with it came a clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. This was no longer just my mother's house. It was my sanctuary, my chance to start fresh. Cutting ties with my father and his family wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Dad tried to reach out a few times, calling from new numbers and leaving voicemails full of apologies and promises to fix things. I didn't answer. His words felt hollow after everything he'd allowed to happen. "I love you, Emma," he said in one message. I was just trying to keep the peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace at all, and I wasn't willing to compromise my dignity for his comfort anymore. Madison didn't bother trying to reach me. She'd made her feelings clear. Abigail's silence stung more than I expected, but I reminded myself that she was still young, caught in the crossfire of her parents' decisions. Even so, I knew it was better to let go of the toxic ties that had weighed me down for so long. With them gone, I turned my focus to rebuilding my life. The first step was reclaiming the house, not just physically, but emotionally. I rearranged the furniture back to the way my mom had it, repainting the walls in soft, warm tones that reminded me of her. I replanted the rose bushes in the garden, choosing the same color she had loved. Each small change felt like a step toward honoring her memory while making the space my own. Work became another anchor for me. My job at Marshall and Brooks Financial was challenging but fulfilling, and I threw myself into it with everything I had. My colleagues became friends, and for the first time, I started to feel like I was part of a community. Harper from the risk assessment team became a close confidant, and our lunch breaks were filled with laughter and brainstorming about future plans. Restoring my mother's bakery, which had been shut down since her death, was a most significant undertaking, though. The doors finally reopened after months of preparation and late nights. I was overcome with pride and a sense of belonging the first time I walked behind the counter, the aroma of freshly baked bread and pastries filling the air. The bakery was her legacy, not simply a company. It was up to me now to continue. I frequently reflected on all that had transpired during the quiet times, including the loss of those I had previously considered family, the heartache, and the treachery. However, I didn't think about it bitterly. Rather, I viewed it as a phase in my life that taught me the value of setting limits, respecting oneself, and the strength of beginning anew. Healing is difficult and not linear. But I felt hope, something I hadn't felt in years, as I stood in my mother's home surrounded by the life I was creating. I immediately realized why my mother had always advocated for future preparation. Even when the people I trusted most failed me, she had equipped me with the skills I needed to stand on my own. I knew I was ready to go when I noticed the roses in the garden, flowering in the dusklight. I owned this place and this existence. I would transform it into something lovely for her, myself, and the future she had always desired for me.
My name is Skylar, and my sister-in-law, Julia, was the one who suggested that I share my story. As you can tell, Julia and I are super close. It was actually through her that I met my now husband, Noah. Julia and I used to work at the same company before my relationship with Noah. She was the one who introduced us, and I am super grateful she did. Noah and I hit it off and are now married. Now, Julia and Noah are truly amazing people, but their mom, Susan, is not. Susan hated me from the moment we were introduced. She straight up told me that she hated me. Noah was pretty taken aback and tried his best to change Susan's mind. I tried to change Susan's mind too, until I realized what a psycho she is. I won't go into detail about what she did, but my God, that woman made my life hell. I can just tell you what she did at my wedding. She poured wine on herself and blamed me for intentionally destroying her dress. No one believed her, of course, but my day was ruined anyway. Noah and I fought a lot about his mom, but nothing ever came out of it. Susan was a single mom who clung to Noah like the plague. Naturally, Noah was conditioned to excuse and overlook all of her behavior. The incident I'm going to talk about happened on my first anniversary. By then, Susan had already messed up many of my big days and done some outrageous things. She was the prime topic of argument between me and Noah. Noah didn't support his mom, but also couldn't agree to cutting contact. Susan was thrilled with Noah's support and continued to devise plans to get rid of me. For my anniversary, she drove to our city and stayed over at our house for a few days. I was already pretty anxious about having her under my roof, but imagine my condition when Julia suddenly called me. "Skylar, there's something important I need to tell you." "Sure, go ahead and tell me, Julia. What's going on? Is it about Susan?" "God, you are intuitive. Yes, it's about my crazy mom again. This time she is crossing all limits. She wants to embarrass and humiliate you on your anniversary." "What the hell? Why won't this woman leave me alone? What has she planned this time?" We were all quite familiar with my dear mother-in-law's antics. She loved to create unnecessary scenes and find a way to humiliate me. She really hated me that much. Noah did stand up for me, and so did Julia, but it wasn't enough to make her stop. I wanted to cut off Susan for good, but Noah wouldn't allow that. She was his mom, and he wanted her in his life. We had countless arguments about it. It was a very sore spot in our marriage. I was reluctant to even invite Susan to our anniversary, but of course, Noah wanted her there anyway. Julia confirmed that I wasn't delusional. Susan did bring bad news and bad vibes with her, but I wasn't prepared to hear what Susan was planning this time. "Mom is going to frame you for stealing her heirloom necklace. She has it all planned, although she didn't give me any details. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen." "What on earth, Julia? This is just too much. She's trying to brand me as a criminal now?" "She is convinced that if she can prove you to be a criminal, Noah will finally leave you. She sounded very determined, Skylar. You have to be careful." "Don't worry, Julia. I will keep my eyes out for her." I was already getting annoyed at Susan again. This was my first anniversary. I had huge plans for this day. Sure, I didn't make a lot of arrangements or have a grand party, but my close friends and family members were coming. I was hoping to have a good time with everyone, but now I have to worry about Susan. I thought about telling Noah what Julia told me, but something stopped me. Noah needed to do better when it came to defending me from his mom. Susan was taking advantage of Noah's weakness for her. Noah needed to see how bad his mom was and cut her off for good. So, I kept an eye on Susan and didn't tell Noah, but I never caught Susan in the act. The day of the anniversary party arrived, and still, I wasn't able to catch Susan. Julia arrived a day earlier and couldn't do anything either. But what was about to go down? Susan decided that it would be wise to come and threaten me before she did what she wanted to do. While I was over refilling my drink, she pulled me aside and said, "You must be having a great time, Skylar. You arranged this fancy party to celebrate your marriage and think you won? Well, you didn't win, Skylar." "What is this nonsense, Susan? How does my marriage anniversary have anything to do with winning and losing?" "Well, don't act so innocent. I bet you're happy stealing my son from me. Noah has been getting distant from me because of you. You think you can take him away from me? I won't allow it. Say your prayers because you are going down soon." Susan's threat again confirmed that she had indeed planned something. Even though I couldn't catch her before the anniversary, I knew I had a way to prove my innocence if necessary. Julia stuck close to me after she saw her mom corner me at the party. We were both just waiting for Susan to strike and start her ridiculous drama. The party was in full swing when Susan suddenly excused herself to go wear her jewelry, as she had apparently forgotten to wear it. Julia looked at me with a hint of understanding in her eyes. I nodded to confirm that I was thinking what she was thinking. We simply waited for a few minutes before we heard it. Susan shrieked. It sounded like a cat dying, but anyways, she ran downstairs with a shocked face and became anxious. She said, "Oh my God, my necklace is missing, and so are my earrings. Where did it go?" I went to wear it, but it's gone now. What am I going to do? "Mom, are you sure you don't have it with you? Did you check the room properly? Did you even bring it with you?" "Of course I did, Noah. This is your anniversary party. I was going to look my best, but now my jewelry is gone." Susan started to ugly cry in front of everyone. People were consoling her, and my husband looked pretty upset. Meanwhile, Julia and I were rolling our eyes because we knew what was up. We stayed quiet for a while to see how Susan would convince everyone that I had stolen her jewelry. When people asked her several questions about the jewelry, she tearfully replied to everyone. But suddenly, she faked looking shocked and acted like a light bulb went off in her head. "Wait a minute. Now I get it. My jewelry has been stolen. I know who might have taken my jewelry. I know who did this." "Mom, what are you talking about? I'm sure you have misplaced it, and it's lying somewhere here. We don't have a lot of people coming over to our house, so how would it get stolen?" "Oh, Noah, you don't understand. No one broke into the house or came from outside to steal my precious jewelry. It is your greedy wife who took it." Everyone gasped as Susan said those words. She was, of course, pointing to me as the culprit of the missing jewelry set. Noah looked shocked and somewhat embarrassed at what Susan was saying. I knew he trusted me and wouldn't believe for a second that I'd stolen from his mom. Sure, he loved his mom, but he also loved me a lot. Just as I thought, Noah immediately defended me. "Mom, I don't think this is fair. You're throwing false accusations at Skylar. She would never do something like this. You must have misplaced it." No, Noah, you have to believe me. Remember how Skylar gushed about my heirloom jewelry? She knew I would never let her have it, so she stole it from me. "Mom, those are some really baseless accusations. Skylar was only complimenting the design. She never once asked you to give her the necklace." "Noah, my poor child, you are blinded by love. You have to see how vile and greedy your wife is. She is the one who stole my jewelry. That's why she never asked to borrow it from me. She wanted it for herself." At this point, Noah and Susan got into an argument. The rest of the guests just kept looking between them and me. It was honestly very embarrassing. Being accused of theft on my own anniversary was something I never contemplated. But things happen, and we must make the best of the situation. And I was definitely going to do that. "You have some nerve to stay in my house and make accusations about me. You think I'm a lowly thief who would go after your jewelry? You are dead wrong, Susan. I am above that. Don't try to act all innocent and angelic, Schuyler. I know for a fact that you took my jewelry. Last night, I saw you going into my room and coming out with a bag. I didn't think anything of it since it's your house, but now it all makes sense. You were stealing my jewelry. Like I said, Susan, you need to stop making baseless assumptions. You have no right to ruin my reputation without any evidence. Who knows what you did with your jewelry? Don't blame it on me. Okay then. If I'm lying, why don't we go and check your room? My name is Schuyler, and my sister-in-law, Julia, was the one who suggested that I share my story. As you can tell, Julia and I are super close. It was actually through her that I met my now husband, Noah. Julia and I used to work at the same company before my relationship with Noah. She was the one who introduced us, and I am super grateful she did. Noah and I hit it off and are now married. Now, Julia and Noah are truly amazing people, but their mom, Susan, is not. Susan hated me from the moment we were introduced. She straight up told me that she hated me. Noah was pretty taken aback and tried his best to change Susan's mind. I tried to change Susan's mind too, until I realized what a psycho she is. I won't go into detail about what she did, but my God, that woman made my life hell. I can just tell you what she did at my wedding. She poured wine on herself and blamed me for intentionally destroying her dress. No one believed her, of course, but my day was ruined anyway. Noah and I fought a lot about his mom, but nothing ever came out of it. Susan was a single mom who clung to Noah like the plague. Naturally, Noah was conditioned to excuse and overlook all of her behavior. The incident I'm going to talk about happened on my first anniversary. By then, Susan had already messed up many of my big days and done some outrageous things. She was the prime topic of argument between me and Noah. Noah didn't support his mom, but also couldn't agree to cutting contact. Susan was thrilled with Noah's support and continued to devise plans to get rid of me. For my anniversary, she drove to our city and stayed over at our house for a few days. I was already pretty anxious about having her under my roof, but imagine my condition when Julia suddenly called me. Schuyler, there's something important I need to tell you. Sure, go ahead and tell me, Julia. What's going on? Is it about Susan? God, you are intuitive. Yes, it's about my crazy mom again. This time she is crossing all limits. She wants to embarrass and humiliate you on your anniversary. What the hell? Why won't this woman leave me alone? What has she planned this time? We were all quite familiar with my dear mother-in-law's antics. She loved to create unnecessary scenes and find a way to humiliate me. She really hated me that much. Noah did stand up for me, and so did Julia, but it wasn't enough to make her stop. I wanted to cut off Susan for good, but Noah wouldn't allow that. She was his mom, and he wanted her in his life. We had countless arguments about it. It was a very sore spot in our marriage. I was reluctant to even invite Susan to our anniversary, but of course, Noah wanted her there anyway. Julia confirmed that I wasn't delusional. Susan did bring bad news and bad vibes with her, but I wasn't prepared to hear what Susan was planning this time. Mom is going to frame you for stealing her heirloom necklace. She has it all planned, although she didn't give me any details. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. What on earth, Julia? This is just too much. She's trying to brand me as a criminal now? She is convinced that if she can prove you to be a criminal, Noah will finally leave you. She sounded very determined, Schuyler. You have to be careful. Don't worry, Julia. I will keep my eyes out for her. I was already getting annoyed at Susan again. This was my first anniversary. I had huge plans for this day. Sure, I didn't make a lot of arrangements or have a grand party, but my close friends and family members were coming. I was hoping to have a good time with everyone, but now I have to worry about Susan. I thought about telling Noah what Julia told me, but something stopped me. Noah needed to do better when it came to defending me from his mom. Susan was taking advantage of Noah's weakness for her. Noah needed to see how bad his mom was and cut her off for good. So, I kept an eye on Susan and didn't tell Noah, but I never caught Susan in the act. The day of the anniversary party arrived, and still, I wasn't able to catch Susan. Julia arrived a day earlier and couldn't do anything either. But what was about to go down? Susan decided that it would be wise to come and threaten me before she did what she wanted to do. While I was over refilling my drink, she pulled me aside and said, "You must be having a great time, Skylar. You arranged this fancy party to celebrate your marriage and think you won? Well, you didn't win, Skylar." "What is this nonsense, Susan? How does my marriage anniversary have anything to do with winning and losing?" "Well, don't act so innocent. I bet you're happy stealing my son from me. Noah has been getting distant from me because of you. You think you can take him away from me? I won't allow it. Say your prayers because you are going down soon." Susan's threat again confirmed that she had indeed planned something. Even though I couldn't catch her before the anniversary, I knew I had a way to prove my innocence if necessary. Julia stuck close to me after she saw her mom corner me at the party. We were both just waiting for Susan to strike and start her ridiculous drama. The party was in full swing when Susan suddenly excused herself to go wear her jewelry, as she had apparently forgotten to wear it. Julia looked at me with a hint of understanding in her eyes. I nodded to confirm that I was thinking what she was thinking. We simply waited for a few minutes before we heard it. Susan shrieked. It sounded like a cat dying, but anyways, she ran downstairs with a shocked face and became anxious. She said, "Oh my God, my necklace is missing, and so are my earrings. Where did it go?" I went to wear it, but it's gone now. What am I going to do? "Mom, are you sure you don't have it with you? Did you check the room properly? Did you even bring it with you?" "Of course I did, Noah. This is your anniversary party. I was going to look my best, but now my jewelry is gone." Susan started to ugly cry in front of everyone. People were consoling her, and my husband looked pretty upset. Meanwhile, Julia and I were rolling our eyes because we knew what was up. We stayed quiet for a while to see how Susan would convince everyone that I had stolen her jewelry. When people asked her several questions about the jewelry, she tearfully replied to everyone. But suddenly, she faked looking shocked and acted like a light bulb went off in her head. "Wait a minute. Now I get it. My jewelry has been stolen. I know who might have taken my jewelry. I know who did this." "Mom, what are you talking about? I'm sure you have misplaced it, and it's lying somewhere here. We don't have a lot of people coming over to our house, so how would it get stolen?" "Oh, Noah, you don't understand. No one broke into the house or came from outside to steal my precious jewelry. It is your greedy wife who took it." Everyone gasped as Susan said those words. She was, of course, pointing to me as the culprit of the missing jewelry set. Noah looked shocked and somewhat embarrassed at what Susan was saying. I knew he trusted me and wouldn't believe for a second that I'd stolen from his mom. Sure, he loved his mom, but he also loved me a lot. Just as I thought, Noah immediately defended me. "Mom, I don't think this is fair. You're throwing false accusations at Skylar. She would never do something like this. You must have misplaced it." No, Noah, you have to believe me. Remember how Skylar gushed about my heirloom jewelry? She knew I would never let her have it, so she stole it from me. "Mom, those are some really baseless accusations. Skylar was only complimenting the design. She never once asked you to give her the necklace." "Noah, my poor child, you are blinded by love. You have to see how vile and greedy your wife is. She is the one who stole my jewelry. That's why she never asked to borrow it from me. She wanted it for herself." At this point, Noah and Susan got into an argument. The rest of the guests just kept looking between them and me. It was honestly very embarrassing. Being accused of theft on my own anniversary was something I never contemplated. But things happen, and we must make the best of the situation. And I was definitely going to do that. "You have some nerve to stay in my house and make accusations about me. You think I'm a lowly thief who would go after your jewelry? You are dead wrong, Susan. I am above that. Don't try to act all innocent and angelic, Schuyler. I know for a fact that you took my jewelry. Last night, I saw you going into my room and coming out with a bag. I didn't think anything of it since it's your house, but now it all makes sense. You were stealing my jewelry. Like I said, Susan, you need to stop making baseless assumptions. You have no right to ruin my reputation without any evidence. Who knows what you did with your jewelry? Don't blame it on me." "Okay then. If I'm lying, why don't we go and check your room? I am 100% positive that I will find my jewelry there. We have plenty of witnesses as well." "Mom, you cannot just invade our privacy like that. It's rude and disrespectful." "Leave it be, Noah. At this point, I don't care. Your mom has taken it too far. If we don't allow it, everyone here will always doubt that I am a thief. It's a big allegation, Noah." Noah looked really torn. He knew that his mother was throwing a tantrum because she didn't like me, but no one could ignore the fact that the jewelry did go missing and Susan had already blamed me for it. I needed to do everything possible to clear my name. So, Noah sighed and told his mom to go check our room. We all went, and people started looking around. Susan, the stupid woman she is, went straight to my closet to pull out the jewelry box that I am sure she had hidden there herself. She screeched and said, Look, Noah. I found my jewelry. It was in your wife's closet. I was right. She freaking stole my stuff because she is greedy and jealous." "What? This is impossible. I know my wife wouldn't steal jewelry from you." "I don't know how it got there. You didn't take it, right, Schuyler?" "Of course I didn't, Noah. You know I'm not a thief." "Oh, really, Schuyler? Then how did my precious jewelry set end up in your closet?" "There is no way you can get out of this, Schuyler. You should have confessed and given me my stuff back." "I'm sorry, Noah, but I think I need to call the police." Noah stood there looking dumbfounded while Susan called the police. Whispers were going around the room, and many couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was peak humiliation for me, but I didn't do anything. I simply waited for the police to arrive while Susan berated me. She called me names and said some awful stuff about me. "Noah, this is it. I know you didn't believe me when I said that Schuyler is a gold digger. I'm sure now you know that I was right. You need to get smart and divorce her. No one wants a thief in the family. She will get arrested by the cops now anyway." "Mom, I don't think it was wise of you to call the cops. You may not like what happens next." "What do you mean, Julia?" "I wasn't going to let Schuyler get away with theft. People who commit crimes should be punished. There should be no room for mercy, or else they will get worse." "I think Julia's right, Susan. You shouldn't have called the cops."
Every night, I strain my ears to hear her voice. A faint and secretive voice from the other side of the wall. I'm intrigued by that voice from the thin wall every evening. What kind of secrets is she hiding? Ah, look, I can hear it faintly again. Tonight, I pressed my ear against the wall to listen to her secretive voice. My name is Chris, and I'm turning 28 this year. I work for an ID startup. I chose this company because I was impressed by the CEO who founded it. He started the company when he was in college. In no time, he rose to the top of the industry. Of course, he's good at his job, but I think his charismatic nature is what really draws people in. I would say that he is a people person. When the CEO convinces you of something, it's hard to resist. I looked up to him. Someday, I wanted to start my own company just like him and rule from the top. That was my goal. I've been working hard, and people inside the company think pretty highly of me. Even outside, a few folks recognize my name. I'm always grateful, because I feel the CEO favors and supports me. Then one day, the CEO personally called me in. I thought he had a new job for me, so I kept my spirits up before entering his office. After knocking, I heard his voice saying, "Come in." With a large window behind him, the CEO said, looking confident, "Chris, I have a job for you." He began without any preamble. "If it's something I can do, I'll give it my all," I replied. The CEO seemed pleased with my response. Of course, he probably never expected me to answer any differently. "I think everything's going just as he predicted." "I want you to get married," he said with a solid tone. I didn't expect any refusal. I doubt anyone in the company could stand up to the CEO when he's this determined. "Understood. Who's the woman?" I replied, trying to stay as calm as possible. The CEO then made a call to summon someone. Since it's an internal line, it means the woman is an employee at our company. I had a hunch at this point. There's been talk of a woman rumored to be the CEO's mistress within the company. Of course, the CEO is a married man. I'm just being used as a diversion. Excuse me. After a polite knock, the person who walked in was just who I had suspected. An accountant named Catherine. I believe she's about a year older than me. For an ID startup employee, she's quite plain and unremarkable. I can only recall having brief business-related conversations with her. "Chris has agreed to everything, Catherine. You'll marry Chris." The CEO's words Catherine quietly nodded. She looked at me, tilted her head slightly, and said, "Pleased to be working with you." I couldn't read anything from that expression. It wasn't emotionless, but I couldn't tell what she was thinking. That's how I ended up as a guy who won the CEO's mistress. After a secret office romance, I thought the fake marriage would be just about living together, but we actually got legally married. Couldn't fool the HR department. The CEO provided a new apartment and furnished it entirely for us. It's a marriage with all the bells and whistles. I've decided to keep it a secret from my parents for now. I'll just wing it. If they ever find out, it'll be just a year. They probably won't hear about it in my hometown, out of state. The CEO's order was to divorce after about 6 months to a year, probably when his wife's suspicions cleared up. It's a fake marriage, so we have separate rooms, no intimacy allowed, just like roommates. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, we just took photos. She looked surprisingly beautiful in her white dress, which was a shock. The thick glasses she usually wears were the problem. I didn't know her real face until we took the photos. On our first night as a married couple, she bowed her head to me slowly. "I'm truly sorry for all the trouble because of Jay and Sims. Please bear with it for a while. John is the CEO. His full name is Jonathan," I figured. So, the rumors about him having a mistress were true. All I could say was, "Oh, okay. If I can endure for half a year to a year, my promotion is guaranteed. But I wonder if she's promised something after that time. Does she intend to always live in the shadows?" Such deep thoughts crossed my mind, but I tried not to dwell on it. I didn't want to get too involved. On the third night of our fake marriage, I woke up in the middle of the night. The beer I had before bed made me thirsty. I left my room to get water from the fridge in the kitchen. The hallway was pitch dark and silent. Then I heard a faint whisper. It was so soft I couldn't make it out clearly. a truly secretive voice. It took me a moment to realize it was Catherine's voice, because the voice was so unbelievably gentle, speaking softly with someone while occasionally laughing. "John, don't laugh too much or he'll wake up." It seemed Catherine was on the phone with the CEO. "Currently, it's 2:30 in the morning. They sure seem like they're sneaking around." I tried my best to walk down the hallway without making any noise. I didn't want to rudely interrupt their moment. Playing the role of a husband in a fake marriage is no walk in the park. I sighed, dropped on caffeine and the CEO's whispered conversation through the thin wall. I know it's ethically wrong, but this has become a habit of mine. Catherine and I continued our fake marriage. We barely talk even when we're both home. It's not out of boredom, but I'd like to dip my toes into their secret world every now and then. Maybe I could find some weakness in the CEO. Information is power in this world. The more you know, the closer you are to winning. Tonight, the two of them started their whispered conversation again. Through the wall, I could hear Catherine's voice full of compassion. Of course, I couldn't hear the CEO's voice. However, her comforting words seemed to be constantly cheering him up. And they also healed me. "Are you okay? Are you tired? Are you eating properly?" Such simple and kind words. I wonder if he was trying to make her laugh, but she giggled quite a bit. Even though they were in a relationship, I never heard them say "I love you." It was just her constantly worrying about him and cheering him up. It's a strange kind of affair. The change in our pretend marriage came about a month after our wedding. She figured out that I had been eavesdropping on our conversations with the CEO. Like always, after she said goodnight, she hung up the phone. I thought I could just go to bed. "Chris, we need to talk." Suddenly Catherine's voice echoed through the wall. I froze on the spot, not sure how to respond. I considered playing dead, but Seren delivered the coup de grace. "I know you're awake. Come out to the living room right now." It felt like she was negotiating with a hostage taker. I gave in, leaving my room for the living room. Catherine followed shortly after. I braced myself for confrontation, ready to apologize. I looked up but was momentarily stunned, caught off guard. I forgot my apology and just stared. She was wearing what seemed to be her high school tracksuit, an emblem and a name embroidered on the matching top and bottoms. And she was wearing even thicker black rim glasses than she had during the day. It was quite a surprising look. After their intimate conversations, I was expecting something more seductive, but this had zero appeal. In front of me flabbergasted me. Catherine quickly brewed some tea for us. "Eavesdropping is not acceptable. It's against the rules, isn't it?" I was accused, and it irked me. Breaking the rules. A fake marriage is also breaking the rules. Hell, having an affair might as well be breaking the rules. To hear breaking the rules from your lips, Catherine, you sure can say that with a straight face. I intended to apologize, but ended up making a sharp retort. I guess the stress of this fake marriage had been building up. It's not entirely Catherine's fault, but I felt like all the blame was on her. I greatly admire the CEO. The CEO is not at fault. I'm well aware. This is a biased opinion. "I follow my own rules," she said so firmly that I was left speechless. She gestured for me to sit on the living room couch. I sat in silence, facing her directly. It was the first time I'd really looked at her since this fake marriage began. Please, no more eavesdropping. It's an invasion of privacy. Hearing her straightforward point triggered me. I did agree to this fake marriage as a part of a deal with the co. They probably see me as a pitiful man who was led by ambition. Perhaps even looked down upon. Realizing this, I felt a mix of shame and unreasonable anger. I wanted to unleash all of my anger onto Catherine, who sat in front of me with a composed look. My clenched fists trembled with rage. "Don't you have anything to say?" Her matter-of-fact tone made my restraint fly out the window. "What? Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty while being the CEO's mistress? Without this fake marriage, you wouldn't even have a place here." I stood up abruptly, but she calmly looked up at me, lifting her chin just a bit. There was no emotion on her face. It seemed my words didn't get to her at all. "You probably laugh behind my back, thinking I'm a low life for accepting such a ridiculous deal for my own advancement, right?" Pathetic, ranting on, I was practically full with rage. This fake marriage made me despise myself for the first time. I feel like such a fool. Indeed, all the words that I lashed out at Kaffir and were what I wanted to hurl at myself. You should be proud of yourself, Chris. You accepted the dirty job based on your beliefs. There's nothing to be ashamed of, she said, looking me straight in the eyes. From her tone and sincere expression, I could tell she wasn't just trying to console me with empty words. Her words deflated my anger instantly, and I was taken aback. "Chris, you're a man of conviction." Feeling weak in the knees, I sat back on the couch. How did she know exactly what I needed to hear? "I'm sorry I took out my frustrations on you. When I think about it, Catherine is also a victim of the CEO's ego." Seeing her serious face, I began to calm down. "You've heard the rumours about me and the CEO, haven't you? It seems his wife found out about them. Catherine explained everything step by step. I hadn't heard any details from the CEO. She took the initiative to talk to me, thinking it would be stressful for me in such a situation. It seems the CEO had Catherine and me enter into a fake marriage to deceive his wife. If we went as far as getting married, suspicions would naturally be cleared. It's apparently a matter of patience until his wife lets her guard down. Can I ask you just one thing? If I can answer it." I posed a question that had been on my mind for a long time. "Are you the CEO's mistress? There are indeed rumours in the company that the two of them are in a romantic relationship. But that's based on minor things like seeing them walking closely together or meeting privately. There's no concrete proof of a romantic relationship. I wanted to clear this up." Catherine looked slightly troubled by my question. She seemed to be pondering the best way to answer, opening her mouth, then closing it again. She hesitated. "How can I put this to make it clear to you? I'm not sure if I'd call it a romantic relationship. However, I do feel that the CEO looks out for me. I felt there wasn't a trace of deceit in her carefully chosen words." "I see. Thank you for sharing." Her tone and sincere expression deflated my anger instantly. "Here's a suggestion for me. Since it's a fake marriage, why don't we try to enjoy it a bit?" Catherine looked genuinely surprised by my proposal. I've never seen her with such a shocked expression. She looked adorable, like a surprised squirrel. "Oh, I don't mean it in a weird way. I'm talking about enjoying our 10 years of married life. It'd be tough to keep using formal language with each other for 6 months, especially since we work together. Being distant might come off as odd, don't you think?" Catherine listened to me with a tilted head. Then, with a chuckle, she extended her right hand. "Well, let's make the best of it, shall we, husband?" When I shook her hand, it was small, and it gave me a slight thrill. Ever since that night where we had an honest conversation, the distance between Catherine and I has been rapidly shrinking. We commute together, and I eat the lunch she prepares for me. When one of us has to work late, we let each other know. Whoever has more free time handles the chores. Living together, You get to see sides of her you wouldn't have known at the office, like how she burns her tongue easily or hates mushrooms, or how she's not the best at folding laundry, or how she dreams of adopting a canine from a rescue centre. I love watching her laugh out loud at comedy shows by my side, but that's where my exclusive time with her ends. Late at night, she gets calls from the CEO. Whenever the phone rings, she retreats to her room for a private conversation with him. I feel completely left out. Every day the nights feel lonelier, and it bothers me. The CEO remains unchanged. He treats both me and her the same way as before. I was getting a bit irritated by his attitude. Did he really trust her? Or did he not think for a moment that she could fall for me? By the time half a year had passed, I realized I was in love with Catherine, but in her heart there was only room for the CEO. I was fully aware of that, yet I couldn't let go of that slight hope. I was told that this fake marriage would last between 6 months to a year. I was surprised at myself for wishing this life would go on forever. Time has passed, and it was halfway through our fake marriage. Catherine and I had a rhythm going, understanding each other's likes and dislikes much like a real couple. On weekends, she joined me in my passion for outdoor activities, even trying camping for the first time. Now she's eager to try solo camping. Lately, we've spent every weekend shopping at outdoor stores. For me, I've become a fan of the tea she brews after meals. She looks so dignified and beautiful, gracefully preparing her tea. When I expressed a desire to learn the art of tea making, she introduced me to a class, and now we attend together. After our tea class, we always grab some burgers together. She gets as excited as a child when I take her to a new tasty spot. I wish this happy life would continue forever. Just when I started to wish from the bottom of my heart, something happened at my office desk. I was occupied with loads of work today. I had plans to dine out with her. There's no way I could work late. That's when I spotted her sneaking between the desks. In her hand, she held an envelope and a list, probably collecting money for some occasion. Whenever there's something to celebrate or mourn at the office, Catherine, being in accounting, collects the funds. It was a familiar sight. "I'm sorry for interrupting your work. I'm here to collect some money." She stood next to my desk. "Is someone getting married or did something unfortunate happen?" I asked her while searching for my wallet. I could sense a hint of tension in her posture. She was behaving differently. So I looked up. Her face was as expressionless as always, but now I could tell she was desperately hiding her emotions. The CEO's wife is pregnant, so it's a celebration. My hand jerked in surprise, dropping my wallet, coins scattered on the floor with a clicking sound. The CEO's baby. But Catherine bent down to carefully pick up the coins. "Well, the CEO has been married for 5 years now. It's about time, right? It's wonderful news," she said flatly, placing the coins gently in my palm. "I'll come back later to collect. Take your time," she said, and left, her retreating figure looking smaller than ever. Watching her back, anger towards the CEO welled up in me. He tricked Catherine, pretending to be loyal to his wife all the while. Catherine had been waiting for him. What's the point of our fake marriage? I was suddenly filled with resentment towards the CEO. I need to talk to him. I headed towards the CEO's office. Just as I was about to knock, the CEO's secretary opened the door. He looked surprised and said, "Perfect timing." Apparently he was about to call me. Nodding to the secretary, I entered the CEO's office. The CEO seemed just as I remembered him, recognizing me. He gestured for me to come closer. "You've worked hard till now. I've arranged the position you wanted. The fake marriage is over," he said. Then he handed me something, a name tag with a new title on it. Among my colleagues, it was an unbelievably rapid promotion. It was everything I had aimed for since joining the company. Aren't you going to be more excited? Now you can finally date freely. Plus, with this position, you'll have your pick of the ladies, right? The CEO, however, his eyes aren't laughing. You're no longer needed. I'll be taking Catherine back. Anger surged as the words left the CEO's mouth. Catherine isn't an object. The way the CEO casually mentioned taking her back infuriated me. Isn't she free to live her life? Do you plan on keeping her trapped and making her suffer forever? It was the first time I'd ever stood up to the CEO, but I felt that I had to say something. Pretty noble words coming from a guy who faked a marriage for a position. The CEO laughed sarcastically, looking at me with disdain. I might have been intimidated before, but not now. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I don't need this position because I have no intention of divorcing her. She's already my wife, I blurted out, staring down the CEO. The CEO frowned in displeasure. Who do you think you are? You think you're in this position by yourself, and that you can have Catherine. Get over yourself. The CEO yelled at me. The usually composed CEO was yelling. If you want divorce, you are fired. Can you really give up the position you wanted so desperately? You've always been so ambitious, the CEO, and I locked eyes, tension filling the room. Then, without a knock, the door to the CEO's office swung open. John, don't my feelings matter to you? It was Catherine. Her face wasn't its usual expressionless self. Her face crumpled, tears shimmering in her eyes. Catherine, could it be you too? The CEO's voice hardened at Catherine's expression. I want divorce. I no longer need your protection, John. You have a duty to make your wife happy. With that, she turned and gave me a smile. I was taken aback and speechless. It was the first time I heard her true feelings. Chris respects my freedom. He teaches me new things and tries to share the same view as me. I don't want to wait any more for what's to be given. The CEO, after hearing her words, slumped into his chair and held his head. What did I do wrong? You said you wanted me to wait, so I did without laying a hand on you. I even proposed a fake marriage to protect you. What did I do wrong? Are you abandoning me too? She seemed to chew on the CEO's groaning words. John, you have to realize I'm just a convenient little sister figure for you, right? It's also hard for me to continue deceiving you with kind gestures. The CEO looked up at her, his eyes resembling those of a forsaken child. She wore a compassionate smile. I will become Chris's wife, a real wife, through sickness and old age, always together. She smiled, and I nodded strongly. Our hands clenched tightly, hers responding with a gentle squeeze. Thank you for everything, CEO. I bowed to the man I'd always admired. Both of you, get out. Don't show your faces again. Leave the apartment as soon as possible. Energetically, we replied, Sure, as we exited his office. Catherine and I then resigned together and quickly moved out of the apartment. I'm glad that it was you that I married for the fake marriage, she said, this as we left the building. Let's look forward to starting today. The pleasure is all mine, my sweetie, she whispered into my ear, making me jump. I blushed, covering my ears, and Catherine burst into laughter. It seems Catherine always had the upper hand. I had a feeling I'd be under her thumb, but I thought it would be fun. As long as I'm with her, I may have lost the career success I dreamed of, but I gained something much more precious. I believe I'm the real winner in life. I will make you happy no matter what, I told her earnestly. She laughed and said, I'm counting on it. I'm willing to bet my entire life on meeting her expectations.
My daughter returned home in tears after being invited to a Christmas gathering at her grandparents' place. She was visibly upset and handed me a wrapped gift in silence. "Mom, look at this." "Why do I have to endure this?" she said. I was at a loss for words. Upon opening the package, I realized it was inappropriate for a child. Alarmed, I immediately reported the incident to the police, leading to the exposure and subsequent upheaval caused by the gift giver's actions. This incident stirred significant family drama, and the person responsible faced severe consequences. At 45, with a younger husband working in the same company, I embarked on a new career path at 34 after a derogatory comment from a previous employer. My current workplace prizes ability over age or gender, and my husband, then my supervisor, showed me great support. We quickly married and now have a 4th-grade daughter, a gentle soul who loves to read and shows kindness to all. My relationship with my husband's sister, however, is strained. Despite my good relations with my in-laws, she disapproves of me for being older than my husband and mocks our quick marriage. Her derogatory comments about my age and the physical changes from pregnancy were hurtful, yet I tried to remain unaffected for my peace of mind. Her attitude changed only when she had a quick wedding and moved away, reducing our interactions and sparing me from her taunts. This shift allowed me to focus on welcoming our daughter into the world despite the challenges of childbirth. The birth of our daughter, although difficult, marked a joyful milestone in our lives, free from the negativity that once clouded our happiness. Gaining strength from my husband's unwavering support and encouraging words was pivotal during the birth of our daughter. When she first cried in the delivery room, his gratitude and recognition of my effort moved us both to tears of joy. However, 5 months after our daughter's arrival, my sister-in-law gave birth to a boy and resumed her visits to our home, each trip taking an hour. Her purpose seemed to be to draw unfavorable comparisons between our children and to make disparaging remarks about my age, affecting my daughter negatively. According to her, it was visible in the supposed wrinkles on my daughter's face compared to the smooth skin of her child. Amidst adjusting to the demands of new parenthood, I found myself astounded by her audacity. She would arrive empty-handed, not bringing any baby essentials, and leave with diapers and formula, claiming she wanted to avoid running out. This behavior puzzled me greatly. It was as if her primary motive for visiting was to belittle me, and then take supplies as though it were her right. Eventually, her visits ceased, thanks to her husband's job requiring them to move to a different state. This brought a brief period of tranquility until our daughter began elementary school and discovered her cousin was also enrolled. Despite our strained family relationship, our daughter and her cousin developed a warm friendship. She, being older, kind and sincere, looked after him. He became quite popular among his peers. By the 3rd grade, they were in the same class, and my daughter received recognition for a summer project reading reflection, which was even published in the local newspaper. This achievement became a topic of conversation among family and relatives, especially during a visit to my in-laws. On this occasion, many relatives gathered, possibly because of my daughter's accolade. However, my sister-in-law seemed unsettled by our family receiving attention. She complained it was unfair, claiming the celebrated book was meant for her son. Despite the fact that the children had exchanged books by mutual agreement, after reading both options, they decided together on which book report to write, showing a collaborative spirit that my nephew appreciated. This incident highlighted the children's ability to share and support each other, contrasting sharply with the adults' conflicts and misunderstandings. My nephew had a preference for the book my daughter read first, and graciously, she allowed him to choose it. When I shared this story, my sister-in-law wrongfully accused me of composing the award-winning reflection for my daughter perhaps recalling that. I enjoyed writing novels during my college days, a fact she likely learned from my husband. Unbeknownst to me, she was also maliciously spreading rumors at the school, insinuating that I had used personal connections with the competition judges to unfairly advantage my daughter's submission. The spread of these baseless accusations deeply saddened my daughter to the extent that she lost interest in her once beloved pastime of reading. This was the final straw for me. I couldn't bear to see her so disheartened, not only because of the false allegations directed at me, but also because she became a victim of cruel gossip. Before taking any action, I confided in my husband, detailing for the first time the extent of his sister's unkindness towards me since our marriage. This included her taking clothes intended for our daughter, rationalizing that infants couldn't discern gender-specific attire, and making derogatory remarks about my appearance during pregnancy, comparing me to a sumo wrestler. Outraged by his sister's behavior, my husband agreed it was time to involve his parents, insisting on personally conveying the situation. Together with his parents, he confronted my sister-in-law at her home. Her initial delight at seeing her family unexpectedly dissolved into shock as she faced a stern reprimand from my husband. Her reaction to being called out was to direct her anger towards me, accusing me of betraying her to her favorite brother, thereby casting herself as the victim in an attempt to deflect responsibility. Initially, I answered her phone calls, mistaking them for attempts at reconciliation, only to realize she was merely venting her frustrations. Eventually, I set her number to go directly to voicemail, effectively ignoring her attempts to contact me. The call ceased after a few weeks, which I initially attributed to her losing interest. However, I later learned that wasn't the reason. In December, a children's Christmas party was organized at my in-laws, a first for them, which piqued my curiosity about the timing. Nevertheless, my daughter was thrilled to be invited, reminiscing about the joyous Christmas celebration she experienced in kindergarten and hoping for a similar event at her elementary school. Unfortunately, her school didn't organize such festivities due to their policy on religious events. I often ponder the need for strict adherence to religious traditions when Christmas itself has blossomed into a universally cherished holiday distinct in its celebration across the globe. This thought crosses my mind, especially since I've noticed some parents are quite particular about maintaining their religious connotations. Last year, deciding to embrace the festive spirit in our own way, my daughter and I chose to celebrate Christmas quietly at home. She particularly enjoyed the gift exchange, a highlight of our celebration. This year, an invitation from my in-laws suggested a modest budget of $11 for a gift exchange at their Christmas party. My daughter and I embarked on a little adventure to a vast shopping mall nearby, searching for the perfect present. She eventually settled on one of her cherished picture books, eager to share its story, and the joy it brought her with someone else during the party. On the day of the event, with the present in hand, she set off to my in-laws' place, just a short bus ride away from our home. After letting my mother-in-law know of her impending arrival, she kindly offered to pick her up from the bus stop. A call from her later assured me of my daughter's safe arrival, allowing me to momentarily put my worries to rest. However, peace was short-lived. Merely 50 minutes later, the unexpected sound of the front door opening on a weekday caught me off guard. My husband was at work, and I was home working remotely during my daughter's winter break. The sight that greeted me was heart-wrenching, my daughter sitting by the entrance in tears. She handed me a gift-wrapped bag, her expression suggesting that the contents would explain everything inside. I found a newspaper with her reading reflection torn to pieces, accompanied by a menacing card written in red ink. It warned us about becoming too arrogant or else risk ending up like the mutilated stuffed animal, also inside the bag, disfigured and stained with red ink to mimic blood. This disturbing display was far from a harmless prank. My daughter revealed that this unsettling gift was the work of my sister-in-law, a revelation that stunned me. The party was intended to be a joyous, child-centric event, with an agreement among the adults to abstain from preparing gifts personally. Yet despite not accompanying my daughter to the party, I was taken aback to learn of my sister-in-law's presence and her heinous act towards my daughter. Had my mother-in-law been aware of her daughter's attendance, she surely would have informed me, as she had always insisted that we notify her of any issues caused by her daughter. This breach of understanding left me dismayed, underscoring a deliberate attempt to harm us, unbeknownst to my mother-in-law, after my daughter came home upset. I reminded her to tell her grandmother about what happened. However, before she could, my aunt intervened, stating she hadn't called for her, and that only children linked to missionary schools were welcome. My daughter, puzzled, asked what a missionary school was, leaving me struggling for words. Recently, a relative had been accepted into a missionary school, sparking much discussion within the family. My sister-in-law's son attended a missionary kindergarten, and we'd heard tales of relatives, unaware they were connected to such schools until enrollment. Our choice was different. We opted for a local kindergarten and public elementary school for our daughter. It seemed my sister-in-law used this as another opportunity to belittle my daughter, distressed by the threatening gift she received. I rushed to the police station, insisting on the seriousness of the threat. Despite initial reluctance from the police to intervene, suggesting it be resolved as a family matter, thankfully a female officer recognized the gravity of the situation. She acknowledged that threats and violence within families are indeed reportable offenses. She empathized with our fear and took immediate action by promising to visit my sister-in-law with a warning that evening. When my husband came home, I recounted the day's events. Outraged, he condemned his sister's spiteful actions and contacted his parents, who were hosting the Christmas party. Yet they claimed ignorance of the incident. They speculated my sister-in-law might have sneaked in through an unlocked back door while my mother-in-law was preoccupied with other responsibilities. The party was left in the hands of the younger family members. Following the police officer's stern warning to my sister-in-law about the consequences of her actions, my in-laws, disturbed by the possibility of criminal behavior, arranged a family meeting to discuss the matter. At the meeting held at my in-laws' house, my sister-in-law and her husband arrived late. She was visibly displeased and unrepentant about the police involvement, while her husband appeared uninformed about the meeting's purpose. This situation underscored the seriousness of the issue, prompting a collective family discussion on how to move forward and address the underlying tensions. When my sister-in-law's husband was finally made aware of his wife's actions towards our family, his shock was palpable. He had been completely oblivious to the extent of the situation until then. Offering his apologies to us, he seemed genuinely remorseful, a stark contrast to my sister-in-law, who remained defiant and unapologetic. Her rationale that the lack of arrest by the police equated to innocence left everyone speechless, showcasing a level of denial that was hard for us to comprehend. In a surprising turn of events, he announced his decision to divorce her. This revelation stunned us all, as there were no outward signs of trouble in their marriage. Explaining his decision, he shared a history of enduring her behavior, which had escalated from neglecting household duties and childcare to causing fear due to her carelessness. Her obsession with appearances led to multiple unnecessary moves, each driven by her vanity and the desire to maintain a certain social status rather than actual job requirements. Their moves were often justified by her ambitions for their son, like attempting to enroll him in prestigious kindergartens, which only ended in disappointment and further embarrassment. Eventually, they settled for a public elementary school, a choice driven by their son's preference, supported by his father against his wife's initial reluctance. The husband's decision to divorce was not sudden, but a culmination of years of frustration, now expedited by her recent harassment. Caught off guard by the divorce announcement, my sister-in-law attempted a feeble apology, seemingly in a last-ditch effort to reverse the situation. Claiming her actions were merely jokes or pranks, however, the seriousness of her actions, especially the hostile message intended for a child, went far beyond what could be dismissed as a joke. Such behavior, which could instill fear even in adults, was indefensible and highlighted the irreparable breach of trust within the family. I confronted her, highlighting the gap between her actions and the instincts of a nurturing parent. Just because you're a parent doesn't automatically instill you with parental instincts. I pointed out, suggesting that her behavior was far from what one would expect from someone in that role. My husband, witnessing her tears, firmly told her that crying was not a solution to the problem, especially at her age. She should not expect sympathy to absolve her of her actions. Yet she continued to cry, denying any wrongdoing and questioning why she was being singled out for blame. She even suggested that the family's disapproval stemmed from my marriage to her brother, implying that the issue was with me being older rather than her actions. Her lack of insight into the gravity of her behavior left us all speechless, and my husband was particularly taken aback by her inability to grasp the situation. With the atmosphere heavy with unresolved tension, the discussion came to an abrupt halt, and her husband had no choice but to escort her home. Their divorce proceedings later unfolded, marred by her resistance to acknowledging her faults. It was only her son's innocent revelation about the Christmas party that tipped the scales, leading to her reluctant agreement to the divorce. Her son, without any ill intent, recounted to his classmates the unsettling gift exchange he witnessed, specifically the disturbing image of a stuffed animal mangled and stained with red, resembling blood. This confession quickly spread among the school community, stirring concern among teachers and parents alike. Following this revelation, my daughter found it difficult to return to school, her spirit dampened by the incident and the ensuing gossip linking her to her cousin's story. The connection between her absence and the events of the Christmas party became a topic of speculation, underscoring the impact of one thoughtless act on the lives of those involved. I had hoped the whole ordeal could have been quietly resolved, allowing my daughter to return to school. When she felt ready, her cousin's intention in sharing the distressing experience was not for amusement, but as a desperate plea to halt his mother's harmful actions. Witnessing the impact of these revelations, her husband was compelled to expedite the divorce proceedings, accepting her terms just to finalize their separation. By then, she had become widely known in the community for her menacing behavior towards children, leading to her being ostracized and even faced with hostility from neighbors. Feeling trapped and vilified, she saw the divorce as an escape, imagining a return to her parental home would provide solace. However, her estranged husband remained firm on retaining custody of their son, a decision she accepted without much fight, coldly declaring her indifference towards her son as she planned to remarry, stating children were an inconvenience to her plans. Her cruel words were met with her son's brave rejection. He expressed no need for her in his life, finding solace in his father's care and warning her against approaching his cousin. Her situation worsened upon returning to her parents' home, where she was denied entry, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. Her downward spiral led her into precarious situations for basic needs, accumulating debt from unsavory sources, and eventually she vanished from our lives. My husband and his parents chose not to pursue a missing persons report, accepting her absence as a resolution. In the aftermath, my daughter regained the confidence to attend school, where her cousin continues to be a supportive presence, promising to look out for her. This challenging period has unexpectedly strengthened the bond between our families, particularly with my former brother-in-law, as we unite in support of the children. My in-laws have embraced both grandchildren wholeheartedly, stepping in to provide care and support in the absence of my sister-in-law. With her out of the picture, our family has found peace and developed a strong, trusting relationship free from previous tensions.